Hello folks. Today we have an interesting problem. A little daunting. This fellow wants the frets put back in. As you can see, these fret slots have been filled. Apparently I did a little exploratory test here. What I did with this slot is I warmed it up with a heat gun and just picked it out with a X-Acto knife and a picker, dental picker, and that seemed to do the job. And then I traced it with a little razor saw afterwards to clean it out. And here he wants to paint the headstock to match the body, which is white. This is a G&L L2000 Series E. Very nice. Finish looks nice. But he wants the headstock to be white as well. We do have water slides. We have 3 of them actually, which is very nice. We'll start with getting the neck off. From the way this stuff feels when I pick at it, and from the way it smells, 5-minute epoxy has a distinctive smell different from marine epoxy or other other resins. It just has a sort of a, I don't know, doggy smell to it when you warm it up. So it's fairly easy to pick out as opposed to those harder resins. It's kind of soft when you heat it up. I'm able to start it with my pick tool, and then I'm able to just take my saw and finish cleaning out the slot. So this, relatively speaking, is going to go fairly easily. I will likely use my Dremel 111 bit and finish cleaning out the slots so that they're all uniform. So when I refret it, I have consistent results. This is a Dremel and a Waverly rig for the Dremel. The bit is available from StewMac. I believe it's 111 bit, I think. You can look it up. But this is how you clean the slots. And the idea behind this is that it will follow the path of least resistance. So if you have a slot started, or an old slot that is, had a fret in it before, it'll basically, if you keep it moving, you don't want to linger and go sideways, obviously. The idea is just I usually start at the far end and pull towards me until I complete the cut. Now it's set, I measure the depth because the recommended depth is between 0.023 inch and 0.025, somewhere, but I really wouldn't go too much farther outside that range for StewMac wire anyway. Most wires are about 0.023 recommended width of the fret slot. So I got it, this is set for 0.024, 0.5. That's a good compromise, so it's not for a maple neck. Three, 4.
I think it was 375, so yeah,
Yeah, that feels good. 0.024.05, did it say? Let's see, we can concoct that. Yep. So that's where we're at. Okay, so get this hardware off of here. We're going to take the truss rod nut out as well and prep this for refinishing in that white headstock. Okay, so we're going to refinish according to the work order. We're going to put a matte finish on this. We're going to, we got some gunky wear that been sanded and down to the wood, and the oils from the hands got deep into the pores and stuff. So I'm not gonna, I don't think I'm gonna be able to sand that out. I can do an exploratory probably the best thing to do here is to well, Okay, good morning, people. How are you today? It is morning at home, the home shop here. We have our GNL neck that we're going to refinish to match the body. These fret slots had black 5-minute epoxy in them, and that was easier to remove than I anticipated. It was a little monotonous, but we picked it all out, cleaned out the slots. We're going to make a new nut, and we're going to paint the headstock white to match up with the body. We also have some water slides, a reproduction of GNL water slide for this particular model, and we're going to put that on there. So what we need to do next is get this finish sanded. Basically hand stripped it by sanding and scraping. I just mounted it on the body for safe transport to home shop, and so there you go. So we're gonna, I think I'll spare you with all the sanding I'm going to do, and next we will, after we have it sanded to our satisfaction, we will seal it with some pre-catalyzed nitro sanding sealer, and then start putting some finish on this baby. Now the color I have for this is a automotive product. I'll have to check to see how well it matches. It's sort of a subdued white, but I think it'll work just fine. We can adjust it if we need to with some transient dyes, and here we go. Okay, we have our first few coats of sanding sealer. Gonna sand it down with a little bit of 400 grit, just a light once over. So I'm going to use Eastwood single stage, which basically means it's a 2K with color in it. um, it's not a base coat, it's an all-in-one sort of solution where the color is part of the 2K, as opposed to spraying a base coat and then clearing it over. It comes out shiny. Now this is a Eastwood, and this particular formulation is 3 parts to 1 part. 3 parts of paint to 1 part of activator. Now I'm going to use my brand new fancy disposable spray cup here. I converted one of my guns to use these. This is kind of cool. This is like a permanent part, and a permanent part, and this is the disposable part. You just drop that in there, okay, and it gives you your parts here, right? And it comes with a disposable lid, and it has a screen on it. You can see the screen to filter, so that's kind of nice. So we're going to add 3 parts of this and 1 part of that. The activator, and part of that. And we should be good to go. So you put your lid on, clicks into place. This is a threaded retainer. Threaded right, holds everything in place. This is my Harbor Freight Spectrum. It's my most expensive gun. It is 2.0. Runs at about 29 psi, and it's HVLP, of course. And I got these converters that go into here. It replaces the upside down cup that's permanently attached to that. So what you do is it interlocks with this, and just press down and twist. Locks all that into place. Okay. There you go. All right, let's fire up the compressor. All right, we're going to sand that before we put the water slide on, so get that prepped up. Water. I'm using, well, 800. Should be good. Now, because it's 2K and it'll be pretty much inert, you can spray nitrocellulose on top of a 2K or a polyester, but you can't mix it with evaporative oil-based products like enamel or oil-based urethane is probably not a good idea. Water base is stable. You can spray it on top of a water base, but you don't want to mix it with anything like related to enamels. It will ruin your day, guaranteed. 2K, you got part A, part B, and it cures into part C, which is pretty much inert, and solvents will not affect it at all, really. This is what they put on cars, remember? And it's very resistant to a lot of stuff, gasoline, oils, whatever else you can throw at a car. It's a pretty tough stuff, so, and you can spray a nitro on top of it, wet sand it and buff it, and you'll get that nice nitro look. Given that it is fully cured, of course. So we're sort of just sanding out the little dust specks or whatever wavy, gravy imperfection there might be there. And then we can clear it over. We're going to put the water slide on. And a little bit of sanding will give it some teeth, since it won't chemically bond. You must give it something to physically bond to, which is the microscopic scratches from the sandpaper. Okay, so we have our water slide. This one was made by Pop's Decals. Yes, George Charles. I think I know him. George Charles. I think he does drum stuff too. He's in one of my groups, I think. Trim one of these off of here. It's a great George. Yeah, I think he's in one of my luthier groups on Facebook. All right. And we're going to this baby out. And somewhat follow the contour. You don't want your water slide to be too huge, so you want to trim it so it's about an eighth of an inch away from whatever subject you're cutting around. Try to make it nice and smooth if possible, like that. Okay. Basically, I have room temperature water. I don't recommend using warm water, especially with an unknown brand of water slide. What makes this stuff stick is the gelatin on which it is in between the paper and the lacquer on the front there. The image is painted on top of the lacquer, so when it soaks through the paper and loosens up the gelatin also acts as a glue. So you don't want to wash off all the glue. That's why you want to keep a close eye on it. Usually when you put it in the water, it will curl up and then it'll start to flatten out. And the point at which it starts to flatten out is an indication that the water has equally absorbed through the paper part on the back and made contact with the glue, but you don't want to leave it for too long. Okay, so I took a picture of the headstock beforehand to get an idea of where it's going to be located. I'm using room temperature water. I don't recommend warm water. We don't want to dissolve the glue that holds the water slide on. And so, all right, so I'm going to put that in there, and then and we'll see that it starts to curl up and then relax. So there we go. And it's curling up a little bit. And when it starts to flatten out, that's when you should sort of give it a test. You could also take a scrap there and get a sense of how long it takes. Alright, it's starting to flatten out. And I'm just going to, very carefully, I'm not touching it yet. Okay, I can see I just moved it just ever so slightly, and it is moving. So, alright, we're going to just start at one end here. It might be a good idea to put a little water on your subject. There we go, and we're just going to hold down the top, the image itself, and just pull the paper out from underneath it in one felt swoop. Okay, so while it's still floating, I'll carefully position it. I'm looking at the picture here. It really kind of follows the line of where the string might be. It's not following the tuner, and it's not really quite following this curved line here. So something in that idea. The S should come forward a bit in relationship to that. Okay. And I'm basically just going to take a piece of paper towel, lay it on top, and gently just tap down. We don't want to shear it from the side. We just go directly down on top. And then we're going to take out some of that water. Okay, I can see some wrinkles. You don't want any wrinkles or anything, so I'm going to hold my finger down. I'm going to use my finger. There's still a lot of water underneath it. Get a dry piece of paper. Gently go in one direction. You can see, oh, I can see a wrinkle there, you see. Very fussy. So I don't know how much that I caught on there. My camera stopped at some point. We got the water slide on gently, flattened it out, dabbed it gently with either a Q-tip and or a paper towel, you know, just by doing that. And then look at it in different light and make sure there's no wrinkles or bubbles. See, like a tiny little something there. I'm not going to worry about it right now. The rest of it looks beautiful, so I'm just going to leave it and let it sit overnight. I just noticed something. I didn't see this before. Looks like I signed the body. I painted this white 2 years ago. I'd forgotten all about it. So I was going, oh, that's a nice finish. Well, that's good to know. It's held up nicely. And it's also nice to know that I still have the exact same color that I sprayed on the headstock that I sprayed on this body. So cool, man. Before we just start spraying willy-nilly, we are going to put a dusting on this for the first 3 or 4 coats before we let it build up. You don't want to soak this. It will penetrate into the water slide, and there's a very likely chance it'll be too much and it'll start to wrinkle. Yeah, I don't want that. Okay. Each water slide can be a little different. It's best to err on the side of caution. So we're just going to give that a dusting. If we can spray this more heavily, the headstock, we're going to take it easy. I'm going to adjust my gun so that the spray pattern is, on the wide side as opposed to a narrow, wet side. We'll get a better dusting by opening up the spray pattern. There are adjustments here. While my dusting coat is drying, I am going to spray regular heavy coats on the rest of the neck. My plan is to apply the bulk of the finish will be at a regular clear. I find he wants it in a matte finish, so I find that matte finishes are prone to chipping off. If you recall, the fender necks during the 90s tend to chip a lot because of the matte additive to the lacquer tends to be quite a bit more brittle than a regular clear. So I don't want to put a heavy matte layer on this. Okay, so I have about 4 or 5 coats of clear. We do want to do the headstock in a gloss because the body is glossy, but he just wants the neck that dry matte feel to the neck. So I'm gonna just give this a sanding before we fret it. I actually left most of the dust in here so that the lacquer wouldn't stick to the inside of this. Just giving it a little clean out. My plan is to, now that I have a few coats of lacquer on there as for a base, I'm going to clean out the slots and we're going to refret it at this stage. And then I will bring it back home to the spray booth and spray my matte coats on top of that so we don't have a excessive buildup of lacquer on the frets. Always clean your wire. I'm going to put a little bit of fish glue on the frets as a little added insurance. I'm going to install all the frets and let it sit overnight and let that cure up. Want to sand the frets so that the lacquer doesn't stick to the fret. Okay, we got about 8 coats on here. Enough to fully cover the decal. Taller than the thickness of the water slide, so that when you wet sand it, it is flush and you don't see the shadow of the water slide. Nice and shiny. We're going to do the headstock in a gloss. You want to have enough headroom in your thickness so that you do not sand off your water slide. That would suck. We're going to tape that off because we are going to do the rest of the neck in a matte finish. We want that to be glossy and the neck to be matte, I think. That's what we're going for. Alright, tape this off. Get a nice clean edge. I'm using this purple tape, and it's pretty easy to just sort of shear it with the sandpaper. I have a 800 here, this used piece. Just go around the edge and make sure that it's clean. You want a nice clean line there. You don't want ambiguousness. Make sure all the nice clean line there, especially on the money side. Oh, see, there's a little spot there. We don't want that. You want to sand the corner at a 45-degree angle, you know. You don't want to go through the finish. You just want just enough to shear that little sucker off. There you go, little sucker. There you go. I probably should use a clean piece because I don't want little pigments of blue on the corner there. Alright, I'm going to find a clean piece here. We don't want that contamination. Contamination. We're going to exercise. Another spot here. It's clean white line. We don't want any Yeah, it was not a good idea to use that old piece of sandpaper with blue paint on it. And sand all that, make sure that's all sanded off. A little naphtha, lighter fluid, whatever you got, degrease. Alright, speaking of degreasing, I'm going to do the rest of the neck because we've been handling it a little bit. No schmutz on the neck. Residue from refretting, especially on the edge. Do a final check here with your finger, make sure it's all good. Feels pretty good. Alright. Okay, I'm using Stumac flat lacquer because I have it. I could mix up my own if I wanted, but I have a couple of cans of this stuff hanging around and it's good quality stuff. So we'll go with that. Okay, I've wet sanded this nitro lacquer to 2000 grit, starting with 800, I believe, to 1000 to 15 to 2000 grit. And get my nice little buffer, Zoda. I like this little guy. Much easier to handle than that massive other thing, which is massive and heavy and awkward. And we're using Presta Ultra Polish. We gotta get our little pad primed up here. A little 2-inch pad, yellow. This first buffing will definitely tell me how much more sanding I must do. I may try the big buffer, the floor-mounted buffer. Alright, we're going to need to pay more attention to some of those scratches there. Yeah. Okay, back to the sanding block. We'll try the floor-mounted buffer next. Get all the excess overspray out of the hole there so that the bushings fit in there without a big problem.
has Johnny and friends. John Martin, is that ring a bell? He has Johnny and friends. You know John, big man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that there was a